UKULULUS.
Okay. All right, just make sure I got that. Yeah, okay. And you're from Cowichan?
We're from Duncan.
Duncan, oh, let me take a picture.
That's a start, and there's ways, and you can help with these groups that have sort of a, you know, a plan, like a package for how to get your neighborhoods connected that way. Actually, yeah, my caucus work this summer is going to communities that are doing this work, finding out what's working, what's not, how do you make this happen more widely.
Have a gas barbecue that I like to cook on.
But it's a good first step.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean it's slow. And you know what? We hope it provides inspiration for other people to do it, which is part of the reason why we open our house to events like this.
And learn of you.
Yeah, hopefully.
For this,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, exactly. So I think this young fellow would like a turn also.
Yes, I was just telling them.
Yeah.
Get them on there.
So I think.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. Yeah. That is on the outside, okay? So the one that's a different color always goes away from the bowl. So like that, okay?
And get your toes to point that way. That's it.
Straighten
Elbows
that arm
straight.
up. Pull it up close to your cheek. Holy smokes, good grouping there.
It's natural.
Oh, that wasn't a bad try. They cost about $4 per watt installed, which meant that the payback on them was probably longer than I was going to live. But now, so we did those, and then we did the lower row of 9 2 years later, and then 2 years later we did, after we got our electric car, we did all of the 20 panels that are on the house. And they were less than $2 a watt installed, so they're way more efficient.
Yeah, I've heard that their efficiency's gone way up, and the price has gone way down. So
it went back up again during the pandemic, but I think that they're probably coming back down again now.
But I'm not lying. Right in the middle of the pandemic.
Quite a few people right on that border there. And besides, this is actually from Elections BC. This is the information they gave us. And that's the line we were given there, and unfortunately.
And that's the old boundary.
The old boundary is here in the old boundary is here in the gray, and the new one where it's going to come in is there in the purple. And not including Shawnigan. There you go.
Oh, sorry, I pulled up the
Yes. So the gap in mental health care for you.
You know it.
I do.
So I think the same problem is that we can super duper small, super bite size.
I'm going to see if I can get Lisa Gunderson to join us in that meeting. So she's deputy leader. Psychologist.
Psychiatrist.
And she is a psychologist.
Oh, psychologist.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be a
She's very focused on it. And she's also going to be the next MLA for Hope Bay if we have her, right? But I think it would be great to have her in the meeting as well.
I think sort of having a pro.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, she's fun. Have you met her before? She is. Oh, I love her so much. We have this funny thing. We're born 2 days apart. Yeah, I'm 2 days older.
Yeah, you're too late.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, I'm the older sister.
So it's kind of like, you know,
Very boring. Very unapproachable.
Total opposites.
Yeah, no.
The funnest season. No, you were the funnest when we always have fun.
When you get a few minutes to yourself, can I have a chat?
Yeah, maybe. Yes. Let's make it happen.
Okay.
But also, you have my
I'll be here.
Yes.
Well, good to see you again. Debbie couldn't make it. She had something else to go to. But Eva just happened to be out with the kids, visiting from Edmonton. So
So Eva, are you that east side?
Yep.
So you're related to Tara?
Yes, my cousin Tara.
Right.
Yes,
Who was my pal in
you went to
elementary school.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember you went to school with her.
Yeah.
So you lived in Edmonton.
Yeah. Yeah, grew up in Edmonton.
Great. Oh, that's so awesome.
Tara and I were, we were very good friends throughout elementary and junior high school.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
We're very public and local.
Thank you. This is very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Motion sensing sprinklers, so I went and bought another one, and I had them actually protecting my berry patch, because occasionally deer were getting into the berry patch and kind of help keep the birds away too. So I swung them around so they were pointing up the driveway and away from the fruit trees, and this morning I found that there was some nice fresh milk poop out in the field here, so they hadn't come back into the yard. And but I think they, as far as keeping them out, I think they're actually just coming in the driveway now, because they're all over the neighborhood. People see them on Cobble Hill Road and Lovers Lane and Campbell Road.
This is the only part of the regional district that they live aside from the west.
Well, yeah, up the couch and of course lots up there. But yeah, they seem to have come into this area. They live here. South Couch, yeah, there's several herds of them. On behalf of my wife and myself, I would like to welcome you all to the Slade Family Farm. And I hope you've had an opportunity to enjoy some ice cream and some pizza. If not, there's still lots of pizza. It looks like maybe Mike's eating the last of the ice cream. But in any case, thank you all for coming and welcome. So I would like to start out with a land acknowledgement. The land that we are on now is the traditional territories, the unceded lands of the Malahat and the Cowichan people of the Coast Salish group. And I would like to just emphasize that this is land. It's unceded land, which means that it was land that was stolen from the First Nations. So while we have our bit of paradise here and our privilege, we are enjoying that privilege because the land that we have is land that was stolen from First Nations. And it's my hope that moving forward as a society that we can find ways to repay the debt that is owed to the First Nations for their thousands of years of sustainable stewardship of these lands, and for the fact that the land was taken from them without any compensation or recognition. So I would just like to acknowledge that. And then, thank you. I do know that in some jurisdictions there is an opportunity to do a voluntary tax on your property tax where you can make a contribution towards reconciliation and compensation for the stolen land. I would like to see that happen in our jurisdiction, and again, it could be something that was voluntary. But in any case, I would like to just say a little bit about why I am a supporter of the Greens and why it's my honor and pleasure to host gatherings such as this. A long time ago, when they were looking for a candidate to run for the Greens, I thought maybe it was a role that I needed to fill, but I was so relieved when a candidate stepped forward, who we will be introducing shortly, who was actually a good candidate and actually ran and won the riding. So that was a thrill for both myself and for my wife. And I am a supporter of the Greens because, in my opinion, they're the only party that is prepared to walk the walk and not just talk it. We've got other parties that claim that the sustainability, First Nations rights and title, climate change are all things that are high on their list of priorities, but then they do nothing about those things. They trample First Nations rights by ramming pipelines through their unceded territories without their consent. They think that LNG is a path to a clean and sustainable future. They have the largest oil subsidy in the history of Canada, maybe in the history of North America, by purchasing with our tax dollars the Trans Mountain pipeline. And those are things that I think that are driving us in the exact opposite direction if we want a decent and sustainable future for our children and grandchildren. And so for me, the only party that is prepared to actually stand up to the big corporations, to the anti-climate lobby, to the fossil fuel industry, is the Greens. And I am so thrilled that we have been lucky to have Sonia Furstenau in our midst and as our elected representative. So I am going to introduce, is it Sonia coming up next? So it gives me a great pleasure and a great honor, and adds to my immense privilege, to introduce Sonia Furstenau, our MLA, and the person who is the leader of the Greens and the next Premier of British Columbia.
Thank you so much, David. And I do also want to start by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of the Cowichan and Malahat peoples. And I think David's very poignant and important reflections on the implications of that has to go beyond just the acknowledgement. It's really a recognition of the harms that colonialism has done for the last 150 years on these lands. And earlier when we had a lunch, I was talking to a person from the Sowet First Nation and talking about where we are now with reconciliation. It's not a one-way street. Reconciliation is about relationship, and ultimately, if we can braid together Indigenous and non-Indigenous understandings, ways of knowing, history, all of these things, we can actually create a stronger bond, but also a stronger province and a stronger future for everybody. And I really want us to think of reconciliation as an active role that we all need to be playing in that. I want to give a huge thank you to David and Kelly for hosting this amazing event, which they have done now for 3 years. It's an abundance of generosity on the part of Kelly and David, and I just love this event so much. I look forward to it every year. It's such a wonderful gathering, and it can only happen because of all of the volunteers who make it happen. And a huge thank you. I know if I start listing, and I did this last time, I'm gonna miss names. But Cammie and Shelby, Aaron and Mariana, Bill. Oh my gosh, see, it's already happening. Kayla, I know you were part of this year as well, and your wisdom from previous years has been enormous. So to everybody that put this together today, a huge thank you to all of you. So delighted to see you all, and so glad that you could join us. I spoke earlier today at the first round about reflections in my head, but I'm going to pick up from a conversation I was just having with Bennett here. And Bennett said, what's the most important issue for you? And I go back to 2017 and our campaign when I was running to be MLA for the first time. And Laura Colpitz was one of my campaign managers. And she used to say, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And my answer to Bennett, and I wasn't as succinct as this, but it's the how. What really strikes me right now is how government is doing or failing to do the things that we need it to do. Delivering services to people like mental health care for youth, delivering services that we would expect, like a thriving public education system, a healthcare system that we can depend on. And as David pointed out, a government that recognizes we are in a climate emergency and we cannot continue to do the same thing and expect that we are going to get out of this emergency. We have to come to terms with the reality that we're in and recognize it's not a sacrifice for us to make the changes that will ensure that we have a livable planet for the next generation. That is not a sacrifice. That is just what we need to do. And having a reorientation of our economy so that it's focused on the well-being of people, on the well-being of our environment, on the well-being of living things, on the well-being of our institutions and our services, having an economy and budgeting around that would actually start to deliver things that we all should be able to count on from government. And thank you. I've really, in the last year or so, really become quite fierce about stating that we should expect these services and deliveries from government. There's no way that we should accept that government can't do the job that it's tasked to do, which is to provide these services and to ensure that we all have the conditions to thrive. We should never accept it's too complicated or it's too complex or it just can't be done. That's the role of government, is to protect the public and the public interest, and of course we can do that. Of course we can. So this is my longer answer to Bennett's question, which is it's the orientation of government in the correct way, in the way that focuses on the people that we serve, the communities that we serve, and the future that we need to be shaping with every decision that we make. That's what occupies my mind. And I so firmly believe that we can do so much better than we are right now. And I don't want anyone to throw up their hands and say, I give up on them. They're all the same. They're never going to deliver that, because that is a very dangerous place for us to get to in a democracy. We are that democracy, and we get to insist on that democracy effectively serving all of us and our communities and our children and future generations. And so that is what I am committed to do, is to ensure that we don't give up on believing and understanding and hoping and knowing that government can do its job, and that we recognize we can shape a future for this province and everybody in it that is so much healthier and stronger than the place we are right now. So thank you all for coming. Dr. Polite. And I'm going to turn it over to Tammy. I got a little double booked, and so I'm going to be sneaking away in about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. And I really try to talk to as many people as I can when we have this event. I'm going to a documentary called Whipped. It's about the BC legislature and how MLAs in the legislature are forced to vote in ways that they don't necessarily want to vote. And then I'm on a panel afterwards to discuss that experience from inside the building. But I will be here for a little bit longer, but if I don't get a chance to talk with you, I want you to know how much I appreciate you coming here today, and we will find another time, we will host another event so we can have those direct conversations. Thank you so much for coming today.
I have to follow that introduction, okay. Firstly, I do also want to acknowledge that we are on unceded territory, and finding out what that word means, unceded, land that's not been agreed to or given up in a treaty, and it's still a continual conversation that I think we all need to be having. And certainly as a farmer, it hits us in a different way, because we're very, very closely tied to the land, and that's what sustains us. And for myself, and I just want to share with you all a little bit about why I'm here. My husband and I own Lockwood Farms, just down the road from here, and we really, really love and enjoy producing food for our community. And in 2021, we really felt that come under threat. With scorching heat coming down, we went through everything that we possibly could to ensure that our livestock stayed alive. And that heat dome, of course, it took Lytton, and it also took the lives of over 600 of the most vulnerable British Columbians. And we have seen such little government action coming out of that. We also know that it took the lives of hundreds of thousands of livestock as well, but that is something that is not talked about at all. We just continue in this modus operandi that is not serving the people. As Sonia said, serving the people is so important. And when I look forward and look to the future, it's not the hopeful future that I saw in my childhood, and I'm fighting for that for my children. I have 3 children, and I will not stand by while this climate emergency continues to happen around us, and while governments continue to fund fossil fuel companies. So that's why I'm stepping forward. That's my story. That's why I'm here. And I found I can make a difference through BC Greens. We have 2 wonderful MLAs elected in the House, and I just did a bit of digging on Google, because Google is wonderful that way. In 1906, the first British Labour MP was elected. He was the first Labour parliamentarian ever. And just 17 years later, in 1923, Labour was the party that formed government. So I look at that history, and I see hope here as well, that we have 2 amazing MLAs, and maybe also just in a few short years, Green can actually form government, and Green can make a huge difference. But that change needs to start here, and it needs to start with us, and it needs to start now. There's a certain urgency around this. In 2024 is the next scheduled election. There was one in 2020. I'm not sure if anyone remembers that election, but I certainly do. Sonia was elected party leader less than 2 weeks before that. And then the NDP poured an awful lot of money into our riding here in Cowichan to try and take Sonia out. And the volunteer team showed up. We showed up strong in the middle of a pandemic, and we managed to get her elected. But I was watching the vote count in Cobble Hill Village there, and I could see that it was pretty tight. It was a close call, and we can't have that again. And now our boundaries are changing. So if you have a look, we've got a nice board over there that shows you in the next election, your riding is going to be different. It's no longer going to be Cowichan. We have a Cowichan and a Malahat Wandafuka, and Sonia is going to be riding in the Shawnigan Lake area, because that's where she really got her start, and the community that really, really supports her. And Wandafuka Malahat area. And then it does leave another seat open, another green seat open in the Cowichan riding. So that's why it is incredibly important for now to start campaigning, to start volunteering, because there's a risk, right? There's always that risk that it might not happen in this election. And we have to be incredibly careful as well, because Sonia is the party leader. So she is going to need to be campaigning around the whole province and not just in her own riding, which is a new riding essentially. So that's why it's really important to have a volunteer team. So one of the things that you really can do now today to help the cause is to sign up and to volunteer. We've got this table here with the BC Green tents. We're going to be going to Cobble Hill Fair and the Cowichan exhibition with this sort of setup, with different ways to engage people, different ways to talk about people. And I know as volunteers, a lot of people think you need to be a policy expert and you need to know exactly what Greens think about everything. And that is not true. I do not know all that Greens think about everything. And also it's true, you don't necessarily have to 100% agree with everything that Greens have stated in their policy. That's the nice thing about being an unwhipped party. Is that we really do come together, and it's the core beliefs that hold us together. And the importance there is that you know your own story and you know why you're here, and being able to share and communicate that, which is what all of us have done, right? What David and myself and Sonia have done is shared why we're here. That's core, and that's all you need to do is just share with people who come to the booth and talk is why you're here, what motivates you, what moves you. So we will be having a volunteer meeting on August 16th at the Hub, and we'd really like to welcome you all to come. It's a nice time, there's food, there's coffee, it's great. We all chat for a minute, and then we talk about the next events that we're planning, and how to move forward and how to really build that support for Sonia in her riding. Anyone $200? Going once, going twice. I see 2 people, wonderful people over there for $200. So at $200, you get a $125 tax credit, leaving your cost actually only at $75. So $150. Anyone at $150? We have one over there. Kayla. There we go. And up here. 2 up here.
Kayla, I'll grab one.
There we go. And Shelby's helping out now, which is great. So at $100, you get a tax credit of $75, leaving your donation at $25.